So there's a massive debate happening right now. Where does India stand on the Israel-Iran conflict? So let's start from the beginning. So Israel was officially founded in May 1948. Before that, it's not that Israel did not exist. It had its own native land, but Jews had been stateless for nearly 2,000 years, expelled from their homeland by the Romans, scattered across the world, then persecuted them everywhere they went after the Holocaust. 6 million murdered. The world finally said enough, and the Jews who had been migrating to Palestine since the late 1800s now had a nation to call home. And here's the irony: India voted against the Israel creation at the United Nations, and yet Israel's very own parliament formally thanked India for being the only civilization in history where Jews lived for 2000 years and were never once persecuted. So when it comes to 1962 war with China, Israel supplied mortars and ammunition when we were desperate and isolated. In 65, 71 wars with Pakistan, same story. Quietly, without any credit, without any formal diplomatic relationship. Kargil 1999, this is the one every Indian needs to hear. Israel fast-tracked Iran surveillance drones, spy series, laser guided bombs, and thermal imaging systems to India in the middle of a live war. So when we needed eyes on the Pakistan soldiers at 18,000 feet, Israel delivered. No delay, no politics. Joint development of Barak missile system, Falcon, AVAX radar system, and the airborne early warning system basically gives our air force a good eye view, and more recently the LRSAM. So PM Narasimha Rao officially recognized Israel in 1992, and after that the relationship went to a completely different level altogether. So and then 26/11 happened. So November 2008, Mumbai, 166 people killed. So Nariman House, a Jewish center where specifically targeted Israeli citizens were murdered on Indian soil. What did Israel do? They immediately offered intelligence support. There were credible reports, and this was discussed in the strategic circles, that Israel was prepared to support India in taking action against the terror infrastructure across the border. India chose a different path diplomatically, but Israel was on board. That's what an ally looks like, right? So now fast forward to October 7, 2023, and this is where I need you to pause whatever you're doing and actually listen. Hamas launched the largest terrorist attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 people killed in a single day. Young people at a music festival shot while running. Innocent people. Elderly people were dragged from their homes. And yes, these are the documented cases of infants murdered. A baby found burned in an oven. So these are not the conspiracy theories. These are documented by the forensic teams, the United Nations journalists who were on the ground. So 364 young people were massacred at the Nova Music Festival alone, and the world somehow started debating Israel's response more than this. So I'm not saying that humanitarian situation in Gaza is not a tragedy. It is, and we will talk about that later. But we cannot airbush October 7th out of this conversation, because if someone broke into your house, killed your family, and took hostages, you would want to know why everyone's only talking about your reaction, right? So now coming to the Iran's exact problem. So now Iran is the real engine behind all of this, right? So after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when Shah Reza Pahlavi was ousted, Iran didn't just change the governments. It became theocratic regime where the supreme leader has more power than the elected officials. And the first thing that the regime did was to export its ideology through violence. So Iran's own human rights record is catastrophic. United Nations reports document systematic execution of political prisoners, journalists, women who protested. In 2019 alone, the Iranian government killed over 1,500 of its own citizens in protests in just a few days. So these aren't Western propaganda numbers. The UN Special Report documented this. And then there's IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So this is not a regular army, right? So this is the regime's personal enforcement body. They run businesses, they control militias, and they fund proxy groups across the region. Hamas, funded by Iran; Hezbollah in Lebanon, funded and created by Iran; Houthis in Yemen, funded and armed by Iran. So Iran literally calls this the axis of resistance. What they mean is, we'll fight Israel and the West using other people's bodies and the other countries' territories. So coming to the nuclear question, so Iran is now in the enrichment of uranium up to 60% purity, but weapons grade is 90%, right? So they are not far. And the Iranian leadership has repeatedly, on record, said Israel has no right to exist. When a country with nuclear ambitions says your country shouldn't exist, that's not a political statement. That's an existential threat. Israel is not overreacting. It's a country of 9 million people surrounded by actors who are openly funded to destroy it. When you come to the West, na, but West isn't innocent either. Now, here's where I'll say something that might surprise you as well. So, the West doesn't have clean hands in this story either. In 1953, Iran had a democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. He did something radical. He nationalized Iranian's oil industry. Iranian oil should be belong to Iranians, right? Sounds reasonable, right? But the CIA and British MI6 didn't think so. They had a different plan. Operation Ajax. A joint coup removed him from power and reinstalled the Shah. So a democratically elected leader overthrown because Western oil interests were threatened. So when Iranians talk about the Western hypocrisy, they're not entirely wrong. Though the 1979 revolution didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because of that betrayal. But and this is important, acknowledging that history doesn't mean we ignore what the Iranian regime is doing today. Two things can be true simultaneously. So the West behaved badly in 1953, and the current Iranian regime is a dangerous, oppressive that funds terrorism and threatens regional stability. But for India, the calculation has to be based on the national interest, not emotions, not optics, not morality. National interest. But even if you see the India's position and the Kashmir angle, and here's where the domestic debate gets complicated. Iran and several other actors have repeatedly made statements about Muslims in India and about Kashmir too, playing the victimhood card internationally, using India's internal matters to score geopolitical points while simultaneously oppressing its own Shia Muslim population, its women, and its minorities. The hypocrisy is extraordinary. You can't claim to be a moral voice for Muslims globally while killing protesters on your own streets. So, India has to see through this noise. Our relationship with Israel is built on decades of quiet, solid, strategic cooperation. Our relationship with Iran as well is it has value too because Chabahar port, energy ties, as well as connectivity to Afghanistan. So all these are there. But remember, there are no friends, no enemies in international relations, only national interest, and that is paramount. So drop in your comments. Where do you think India should stand on this? And follow for more. Thanks.